The sun hung low over the desert and the land glowed like warm copper. Samuel Boyd rode his tired horse along a narrow path that curved between flat rocks and tall cactus. A light wind moved across the plain, picking up small waves of dust that drifted after him like ghostly ribbons. Samuel's clothes were faded from long days under the open sky, and his hat brim was bent where he always pinched it with his thumb and finger. He carried no banner and claimed no town. He was just a traveler, going where the road opened and ending where the light ran out. He did not hurry. He never hurried. The desert did not reward those who pushed it. That evening, he reached a small spring at the edge of a quiet canyon. The water rose clear and cool from a crack in the rock and slipped into a shallow pool. Grass grew in a green ring around it, a soft brightness against the pale sand. Samuel slid from the saddle, led his horse to drink, and cupped his own hands in the cold water. It tasted like stone and rain, honest and clean. He let the horse wander, then sat with his back against a smooth boulder watching the sky soften into pink and gray. He told himself he would ride on in the morning. He always told himself that. A whisper of movement caught his eye. Samuel did not startle, but he turned his head, slow and careful, the way a man learns to do when he lives alone under a big sky. A figure stood on the far side of the spring, half shadowed by a stand of mesquite. She was young and her step was steady. Her hair was long and braided. She wore a woven band at her forehead and her dress, sewn by hand, fell simply to her ankles. She looked at him as if she had been waiting, not chasing, not hiding, just standing in her place until the right moment came. He could not read her face, but he could feel her calm. "Evening," Samuel said. His voice was quiet and even. He did not rise yet. The desert taught patience, and the spring was a shared gift. The woman stepped into the light. "Evening," she answered. Her voice carried the soft roundness of a river stone. "My name is Ayana." She did not ask his. The way she stood, the way she watched him and the horse, told him she noticed everything, counted everything, and trusted very little. "Not yet," he nodded once. "Samuel." It felt enough. For a while they simply listened to the water. The sun eased down. A single star showed, then a pair, then a dozen. Somewhere far off a nightbird called and fell silent. Ayana moved closer and kneeled by the pool. She touched the water with her fingertips and closed her eyes for a moment. Samuel understood the feeling. Water like this was a gift you thanked without words. When she looked up, her eyes were clear and strong. "I have been waiting near this place," she said. "Some nights I sleep in the brush above the canyon. Some days I follow the old footpaths. I look for a person who can move quietly and see what is hidden." Samuel studied her face. He did not see fear. He saw purpose. "What do you need to see?" he asked. She drew a slow breath. "There are men," she said, choosing her words with care, "who took things that were not theirs to take. They marked land that did not belong to them. They carried away baskets of goods, tools, and blankets. They told stories that were not true, and used those stories to push my people from a place that is part of our life. It is a spring like this one, but larger, a place where children learn and elders share. They said it was empty and unused. But it is not empty. It is never empty to us." Samuel kept his eyes on hers. He did not ask how long ago. He did not ask why no one had stopped them. He had seen many places where paper and ink walked ahead of truth, and where quiet families were told to be quiet somewhere else. He had also seen that loud anger did little to change such things. What changed things were facts gathered with care, steady feet, a patient plan, and help from someone who could carry a story to the right ears. "You've been following them?" he asked. "I have watched," Ayana said. "They travel a route from the big town to a small storehouse by the river. They carry boxes and sacks. A man with a fine coat keeps a book. He writes in it every time they stop. I believe the book holds the answers we need. But I cannot walk into their camp and ask for it. They know my face, or at least my dress, and they would not let me near." Samuel's horse snorted and swished its tail. Samuel reached to rest a hand on the animal's neck, and the simple movement gave him a moment to think. He had noticed something about Ayana's words. She did not say she wanted to hurt anyone. She did not use sharp words. She spoke of taking back what was taken, and of truth that belonged in the open. That mattered to him. She stood and faced him fully now, her shoulders square, her chin level. She did not raise her voice, yet the air felt charged like the moment before rain. "I do not ask you to make trouble for its own sake," she said. "I ask for balance. If you help me set things right, if you help me bring back the proof and the goods, if you help me bring the truth to a fair hearing, I will keep a promise with my whole life." Her eyes did not waver. "Take my revenge, and I will be your wife forever." The words fell between them like a small stone in a clear pond, sending soft circles outward. Samuel felt the weight of them. He looked past her to the dark shape of the canyon and the first silver edge of the moon. He understood that the word she used, revenge, did not sound like anger in her mouth. It sounded like balance, like returning a missing piece to a broken bowl so water could be held again. He had learned long ago that some promises were too light and floated away. This one was heavy in a good way. He rose at last. He was taller than she was, but he did not try to stand over her. "Ayanna," he said, trying her name with care, "I do not take promises lightly, and I do not make them to win someone's favor. I make them if I know I can keep them. Tell me what you need from me. Tell me what you have already learned. If it sounds honest and if it does not cross the lines I keep inside myself, I will help." Something eased in her face. Not a smile, not yet, but a small softness around the eyes. She gestured toward the canyon wall, where a narrow ledge rose in steps like a hidden stair. "Come," she said. "I will show you where I watch." They climbed the ledge in silence. The night crisped as they rose, and the spring below turned to a small mirror. At the top, the land opened into a ridge covered with low plants that smelled like lemon and smoke. Ayanna moved with the surety of someone who knew each stone. She led him to a flat spot behind a boulder that faced a winding trail far below. Moonlight washed the land in pale silver. From here, Samuel could see a distant line of cottonwood trees that marked the river's path. Beyond them was the faint shape of hills. Ayanna crouched and pointed. "There," she said. "They pass under those trees 2 times each week. They stop in the clearing where the ground is smooth. They count their boxes. The man in the fine coat writes in his book. He drinks coffee from a tin cup. He sets the book down on a crate by his knee. Then he sharpens his pencil with a small knife. He does this each time. He does not look up while he sharpens it. He trusts the others to watch." Samuel listened, impressed by her memory for small things. "How many men?" he asked. "4, she said. 2 are restless and talk. 1 is quiet and careful. The man in the coat tells them where to go and when. He is the one we need to follow to the storehouse. I do not know what name is written on the building, but I know he keeps a key on a leather string around his neck. He counts it with his fingers when he thinks. He always ties the string twice." "These habits are strong, and the goods?" Samuel asked. "Carved bowls, blankets, woven belts, small stones with marks on them, beadwork, copper tools," she said softly. "Things from my people and from our neighbors. Things that hold stories and should not be hidden in someone else's boxes. The book will tell where they send them, and the key will open the door where they wait." Samuel ran a thumb along the edge of the boulder, feeling its roughness. He could already see the shape of a plan settling like silt in clear water. It would not be loud. It would not be quick. It would require long hours, careful timing, and a steady hand. He knew how to walk behind noise without making any of his own. He knew how to read tracks, but he also knew how to read habits. People made paths in the air just as they did on the ground. "How long have you watched?" he said. "Long enough to know their pattern," she answered. "Not long enough to act alone. I waited because I wanted a partner who understands that quiet work is strong work." They sat with that thought. The desert night drew close around them like a shawl. Somewhere near the ridge, a soft rustle told of a small animal moving through dry grass. The stars multiplied. Samuel let the silence last until it felt complete. Finally, he said, "I will help, but we must speak clearly about the line we will not cross. We will not harm anyone. We will not cause losses that cannot be forgiven. We will take what belongs to your people and bring truth to a place where it can be seen." Morning came soft and cool, and the desert woke with small sounds. Birds moved in the mesquite, and a thin, silver line of light slid across the canyon floor. Samuel opened his eyes to the sound of water and the smell of clean air. Ayanna was already awake. She sat cross-legged, facing the spring, her hands resting on her knees in quiet balance. When Samuel stood, she looked over with a calm nod, as if this was the start of a day that had been waiting for them both. They ate simply. Flatbread Ayanna had saved, a handful of nuts, a few dried berries. Samuel shared a strip of jerky he kept for long rides, and she smiled with thanks. Then, without rush but without delay, they began. They walked the edge of the canyon, moving behind rocks and low brush so their shapes would be part of the land. Ayanna's steps were light and certain. Samuel's were steady and quiet. The path they chose curved toward the cottonwood trees that marked the river, a place she had watched many times. As they walked, they reviewed their plan in practical words. The men they followed came this way 2 times each week, always near midday. They liked the smooth clearing by the trees because wagon wheels rolled easily there, and the shade fell in a wide, cool circle. The man in the fine coat sat to write in his book. He set the book on a crate. He sharpened his pencil the same way each time, careful, slow, not looking up. These habits would serve as a door that could be opened without noise. By late morning, they reached the ridge that looked down on the clearing. The river shimmered like a ribbon of glass. Ayanna pointed out a small stall set back from the road, where a woman sold bread and jars of honey. The woman stood in the doorway and waved to travelers as they passed. Children played near a small garden, their laughter like the sound of bells. The woman's name was Marta, and she met the world with warm eyes and a headscarf tied snug under her chin. Ayanna said Marta had a quick mind and a deep dislike for lies, but she did not make trouble. She made bread and kept her door open to good people. They approached the stall around the side, not from the road. Ayanna called out in a neighborly voice. Marta saw them and smiled wide. She hugged Ayanna like a cousin, then looked at Samuel with that same open welcome. He felt at ease. They sat at a small table and Marta poured water into clay cups. Ayanna explained the plan again, this time with small details shaped by kindness. She asked if Marta would speak with the men when they stopped, just long enough to keep their attention on friendly talk. Ask about routes, ask about buyers in town, ask about the fine coat and the pencil. Nothing hard, nothing sharp. Just the kind of questions a person asks when she wants to know what to bake for the coming weeks. Marta nodded. I can hold a conversation like a basket, she said. I can keep it open until you are done. She added in a low voice that she had seen the men carry boxes with patterns on the wood, patterns she recognized from a neighbor's craft. Her smile thinned. I like honest trade, she said. I do not like trick trade. Samuel thanked her and left a small payment for bread they would share with the children later. Then he and Ayanna moved to their place above the clearing, hidden behind leaves and stone. The sun rose higher. The air warmed. In the distance, dust rose on the road, then settled, then rose again. A faint clatter of wheels reached them. A wagon rolled into the clearing and 3 men walked beside it. Behind them came a rider on a well-brushed horse, his coat neat, his hat straight. Samuel watched Ayanna's face tighten just a little, then smooth again. She was steady. She had done this watching many times. The men led the wagon into the shade of the cottonwood trees. They stretched their backs and laughed. The rider dismounted, took a tin cup from his bag, and poured himself a drink from a jug. He set a small book on a crate and patted his coat pocket as if checking for something. Marta came out with a wide smile and called down to them, a friendly greeting that made the clearing feel like a porch. She brought a basket of fresh bread, warm and sweet. The men were quick to accept. She asked about the road from the big town, about who was buying what, about the price of sugar and the gossip at the general store. The men talked and chewed, happy for easy company. The rider sat on the crate, pushed up his sleeves, and opened the book. He wrote a few lines. Then, as Ayanna had said, he took out a small knife and began to sharpen his pencil, the blade moving slow and neat. His eyes were down. His attention was in the small shavings that fell onto the dust like curls. Samuel touched Ayanna's sleeve. It was time. She nodded. They moved like shadows along the ridge, then down a narrow cut in the rock that reached the clearing from the side. Ayanna went first, her feet careful on the loose stones. Samuel followed, staying in her rhythm. At the base, they crouched in the brush and drew closer, step by step, until the wooden crates formed a screen between them and the men in the shade. Marta laughed at something one of the men said about a mule that liked to sit down in the road. She asked a playful question and held up a jar of honey, so the sunlight caught it like amber. All eyes turned to the glow of the jar and to Marta's moving hands. Samuel reached the back of the crate where the small book lay. His fingers were gentle. He slid it backward an inch, then 2, never lifting, just gliding across the wood until it slipped into his hand. He felt its weight. Not heavy, but full. He passed the book to Ayanna. She opened it with care. Inside were rows of neat writing, dates, places, numbers, and notes about baskets, belts, bowls, and stones. Names of buyers, names of wagons, names of towns. It was like a map of their taking. Samuel took a small notebook and pencil from his pocket and began to copy. He wrote fast but clear. He did not try to take everything, only what mattered most. Dates and places, goods and totals, the names of those who took and those who bought. Ayanna kept watch, her breath steady, her eyes moving like birds over the page. Marta's voice continued, easy and warm. She told a short story about her niece learning to bake, how the dough had stuck to everything and made a flour cloud in the kitchen. The men laughed. Even the writer smiled, tiny curls of pencil wood falling into the dust. He blew on the tip and held the pencil up to the light as if he admired his own careful work. Then he set the knife down and reached for his tin cup again. Samuel closed his notebook, slid it into his shirt, and gave the small book back to Ayanna. She moved like the wind and set it where it had been, angled just the same so it would look untouched. Then they eased backward, inch by inch, until the crates no longer hid them. They slipped into the brush, climbed the narrow cut, and returned to the ridge. They lay on their stomachs, looking down. Their breathing slowed. Marta finished her visit by handing the men a bag of day-old bread for the road. One of the men tried to pay too little, and she laughed and named the fair price. He smiled and paid the right coins. Then the wagon moved. The men called goodbye. The rider tucked the book into his bag, mounted, and tipped his hat. They rolled away, leaving the clearing as bright and simple as it had been before. Ayanna exhaled a long breath she had not noticed she was holding. Samuel turned to her with a small nod. "We have what we need," he said. They thanked Marta with true warmth and shared fresh bread with the children, who carried the pieces away like small birds carrying twigs. Then they took a quiet trail toward town, keeping to the cottonwood shade where the air was cooler. It was mid-afternoon when the church bell rang one clear note and the school roof flashed in the sun. The town was not large. People knew one another. Faces were not strangers. Faces were part of the place. They went first to the mission. The priest was an older man with kind eyes and hands that had planted many garden rows. He listened without interrupting as Ayanna spoke. She placed Samuel's notes on the table and showed the neat lines. She told him what the goods were, where they belonged, and what it meant to take them. The priest read slowly, lips moving, and then looked up with a steady gaze. "Truth," he said, "does not shout, it stands, and when it stands, people see it." He promised to speak with the teacher and the town clerk. They would hold a fair meeting in 2 days' time. All could attend. The men would be invited, and they would be asked to bring their book. 2 days can feel long, but they filled the time with careful work. Samuel and Ayanna drew a clear map of the river road and marked the places from the notes. They listed the names of people who had bought goods and those who might not have known what they were buying. They wrote a simple letter to each neighbor whose craft appeared in the notes, inviting them to the meeting, explaining only that it was about their work and their pride. Marta walked the letters to friends who walked them farther, and the messages moved through the town like quiet water. When the day came, the people gathered in the schoolhouse, which smelled of chalk and pine boards. Sunlight made bright squares on the floor. The teacher stood at the front, the priest beside him, the clerk with a book of blank pages ready to record. Samuel and Ayanna sat in the second row, side by side. Marta slipped in at the back, her eyes bright, her smile small but strong.